to play that way that Boston does. I mean, from my perspective, it's easy to overreact to what, how the season ended. The Lakers were better than 28 other teams, and lost to a team in the finals that was, in the end, better. The Celtics were just the better team. I picked it wrong. A lot of people picked it wrong, but the Celtics were just the better team. And to me, I would try not to overreact to it. I don't think most teams can defend Kobe the way that Boston did.
Talking about one of the defenders, James Posey, was actually who just signed with the New Orleans Hornets. I thought a guy who actually was going to fit the Lakers system if they had a chance to get him. I kind of knew that was kind of a backup to a Sasha Vujacic. And what's just surprising to me is that Sasha hasn't had an offer yet anywhere outside the Lakers. Surprises me. Does it surprise you at all?
A little bit. I think the thing about free agency in the NBA that's so tricky is that, once, especially with a guy like Sasha, who's probably going to get mid-level money, that's really his slot, I think, somewhere in there. There aren't a lot of teams, I think, that can afford to pay him much more than that or would be willing to. And because of that, all these teams that have their mid-levels are kind of waiting on everyone else to, a guy like Posey to see where he's going, and players like that, Kurt Thomas and other things, and then they'll go out and look at somebody like Sasha, and then with Sasha also the Lakers have the right to match, and so when you add that together with the restricted free agency, it makes it so teams are going to be a little slower, I think, getting in. Teams don't like to have their potential cap space locked up for a week while the Lakers decide whether or not they want to match.
Talking about matching offer sheets and contracts, Ronny Turiaf signs a offer sheet to the Golden State Warriors, 4 years, $17 million. I think there's a couple of ways looking at this thing. I think that you can look at it in a couple of years, maybe in his third year of his contract. Is the guy worth $4 million then? I think you can. I think he probably is worth that in about 3 years. Now, the other fact, you're looking at a Golden State team who's got plenty of money to spend. They're losing guys like Elton Brand and couldn't sign him, and of course losing Baron Davis. So it's kind of a team that's going to throw all this money at them, and I think they're looking at it like it's going to be kind of a poor man's Elton Brand. I think Ronny will probably maybe even start on that team. I don't know, but what's your feeling of Turiaf? I should say, what's your feeling of the Lakers? You think that they're going to match the offer sheet?
No, my gut says no. I put it up. I was actually talking to my brother about this today, who also writes in the blog with me. I think we both put it about 60-40. Says they won't match. But like you said, it's not outrageous money for a player like Turiaf. In a couple of years, they could, he could be playing a role on any team really that makes him something of a bargain. I think the big question is, if you don't think you're going to keep Lamar Odom past this year, it gives you more incentive to keep Ronny Turiaf around, because then he becomes a much bigger part of your team for the next 3 years and perhaps beyond, down the road. If you think you might hold on to Odom, though, Turiaf becomes more of a luxury, and he's a guy that, depending on how things shake out, what kind of lineups Phil Jackson wants to use, how well it works out with Lamar at the 3 with Bynum and Gasol. He's a guy who could play 10 to 15 minutes on some nights, and that's a lot of money for a guy who's going to play 10, 12 minutes, especially with people like Vlad Radmanovic and Walton on the bench, who are probably going to get a lot of pine time as well, but eat up a lot of cap space.
Brian, you bring up your brother Andy, right? Andy, right?
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay, I'm sorry. You bring up your brother Andy. I have a brother, and we get along fine, but we don't have the same. I like sports, and he's kind of a guy who just is totally not against sports, but not into the whole thing. And I want to bring this up to you because I'm very curious on how both of you guys got into the business and how both of you guys landed a sweet job with the LA Times, and how all that happened.
Well, it was actually relatively. Like a lot of things that in entertainment or journalism or whatever, both of those fields, a lot of things happen kind of by luck. I moved out here. My brother went to SC. I moved out here after I was done with school, and we were actually going to try to do a little screenwriting, writing for writing movies, writing for TV, stuff like that. But our best jobs that we got actually turned out to be doing some freelance work for ESPN, and from there we were actually able to build kind of a niche at ESPN, ESPN.com, and kind of parlayed that into the gig with the Times when they needed blogging. They were decided to go ahead and start, join the 21st century or whatever century we're in, and get online. And they hadn't started their program. We happened to have a connection with the sports desk at the Times and threw our hat in the ring. And I think mostly we beat everyone else to it. So that's probably it more than anything.
Back to some Laker talk. Signs point to the Lakers having a healthy Bynum and Ariza, of course. So, essentially, it's almost like picking up two big pieces via free agency. Do you think that's enough to make another appearance to the NBA Finals? If so, do those guys get them over the hump?
I think there's no reason to believe that the Lakers won't be certainly as good as they were next year or better than they were last year. Whether that means they're going to win the Finals this year, I have no idea. But they should, if they bring back the exact same team or lose Roney and fill in with a body, someone they can get, with part of the mid-level or, a veteran's exception or something like that. There's no reason to think that as long as they stay healthy, they won't be as good as they were last year. Guys like Jordan Farmar should be a little bit better. Sasha Vujacic should be a little better. Bynum should be made better by Gasol's presence. So they ought to be pretty good. I don't know if they have enough to win the Finals. I am of the belief that they're better off seeing what they have, trying to see if Odom works and doing all these things before deciding that the Celtics, in Game 6 and all these things, means that they can't win. So it's a lot easier for them to get worse than it is for them to get a lot better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're talking about mid-level guys. Ronny Turiaf, I think we both agree that I don't think the Lakers will match that offer that Golden State has offered. Kurt Thomas in the works. So what do you think there as a backup plan?
I think he'd be cheaper. He'd be cheaper and probably for a shorter term. He's a more experienced, a little more rugged than Ronny. Ronny, for all of his enthusiasm and all of his effort, is actually not a really sort of a tough guy inside. He's a good shot blocker, but he's not a big body inside. He was actually playing out of position for most of the season as a center. Kurt Thomas is a little bit more of a traditional banger, good rebounder, lots of experience, can hit the little mid-range jump shot, which helps him fit in the triangle. If they could get him for like 2 years as opposed to 4, I wouldn't give him more than 2 seasons, but if they could do that, I think he would be a very good substitute there.
And some other stuff I want to talk to you about. Is there any legs to this Odom for Artest Kenny Thomas deal?
I don't think it's going to happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't. I feel like the Lakers will never take Kenny Thomas's contract without giving up. Maybe if the Kings would take back one of LA's bad contracts, maybe it would happen. But the Lakers are not going to take Kenny Thomas just to pick up Ron Artest. It's not going to happen.
And what about Shawn Marion?
I'm not a big fan of them going to get Shawn Marion. I think he's a guy who chafed in his role as a third banana, so to speak, in Phoenix. And I don't know how well he's going to handle being a fourth guy, really, potentially, in Los Angeles. As a player, he's a good fit. He spreads the floor. He's a very good defender. It depends on how much you'd have to pay him after next season. He's a guy who could theoretically ask for and get a lot of money if he has a good year. So, I'm wary of Marion. His skill set is perfect for what they need. The rest of it, the peripherals, if you will, don't quite match up as well as I think the Lakers would need. But I'm kind of an Odom guy, so I might come at this from a slightly biased perspective. I like Odom.